Absolute power. Unpunished crimes. From modern moguls to ancient gods, how far does impunity go? Today, justice can prevail. But it wasn't always like this. Millennia ago, an immortal god, holder of absolute power, committed atrocities without being questioned. Protected by his divine status, he knew no limits. Who was he? And what drove him? Let's journey to Olympus to try to understand. Zeus, known as the king of the gods in Greek mythology, is a powerful figure full of contrasts. As the ruler of Olympus and lord of the skies, he was feared for his strength and revered for his wisdom. Zeus was seen as the upholder of divine order. However, behind this worship lay a dark truth. He violated women, using deception to satisfy his own desires. What's more disturbing is that he did this without any remorse, knowing his divine power would shield him from any consequences. Today, we'll revisit two of the most notorious examples of his impunity and attempt to understand the true motivations behind these actions. Zeus saw Leda, a pure and vulnerable woman, and decided he would possess her. But how did he manage it? What does this reveal about the true nature of Zeus's power? Zeus didn't rely solely on physical strength. He used his intelligence and manipulative skills to overcome his victims. In this case, Leda's beauty fueled his desire. Transformed into a swan, he used his divine form to get close, hiding his dark intentions beneath beautiful feathers. For Leda, there was no choice, only the will of a god. As the swan approaches, Leda takes a hesitant step backward. Her expression is one of confusion and uncertainty. Who are you? Why are you here? But the swan doesn't respond. It simply spreads its wings slowly, an imposing display, revealing its true form. The encounter ended in silence. Leda, stunned and powerless to resist, was left alone, bearing the pain of what had happened. A pain she never asked for, but one that was imposed by Zeus's power. Zeus deceived Leda with a flawless disguise. But what drove him to use tricks to manipulate and dominate? Was it mere desire, or was there something deeper at play in his mind? A man from the past might have the answers. Sigmund Freud. Known as the father of psychoanalysis, Freud devoted his life to uncovering the mysteries of the human soul. In Civilization and Its Discontents, he wrote that narcissism drives a person to seek gratification at any cost, disregarding others in the process. What if Freud himself could analyze Zeus's behavior? It's Austria in the 1920s, where Freud spent his days unraveling the secrets of the human mind. What would he say about someone who uses power to fulfill limitless desires? Here in Vienna, we'll listen to Freud's words. What he saw in the human mind might help explain the actions of Zeus, the king of Olympus. Dr. Freud, what drives someone to act as if the world exists solely for their pleasure?
This is narcissism. The ego inflates so much that the other person loses their own worth, becoming just an instrument for personal gratification. The narcissist sees the world as a mirror, where everything reflects their needs and desires.
And what about when someone uses disguises, tricks, or manipulations to get what they want? How does that fit in?
It's a way to satisfy the ego without resistance. The narcissist can't stand boundaries or obstacles. So, they create illusions, disguises, tricks, masks, everything to bend reality to their will, without facing the limits others impose.
Freud showed us how narcissism can explain Zeus's disguise with Leda. But there's more. Zeus's power wasn't just about desire, it was about domination. What happens when a god believes they can take whatever they desire, without limits, without resistance? Let's look at another case and find out. After seducing Leda, Zeus set his sights on Europa. Taking the form of a bull, he lured her with the beauty and mystery of his appearance. What seemed like an innocent encounter was soon revealed to be an act of absolute power. Europa hesitates, but approaches the bull, fascinated. She gazes at the animal in admiration and says softly, "What a magnificent creature." Suddenly, the bull surged forward with power and speed, carrying Europa with him out to sea. She tried to cling to him, but the wind muffled her scream. Zeus carried off Europa just as he had Leda, without hesitation, without guilt. Power, desire, or merely a symbol of his absolute dominion? Freud went beyond narcissism. In Totem and Taboo, he explored the primitive instincts that fuel power and domination. Why do powerful people dominate others so easily? The line between desire and violence begins to blur.
Primitive impulses emerge from the unconscious as irresistible forces. Power doesn't just spark the desire to possess, it also acts as a channel to satisfy repressed drives. Domination becomes a reflection of basic psychic energies seeking expression. It's not merely about desire, but about the manifestation of the ID, governed by the pleasure principle, which often transcends the constraints imposed by morality or social order, revealing the primal roots of the struggle for control.
What about when someone sees themselves as above the rules? When they believe they're free of all constraints?
That's the crux of the problem. It revives a primal mindset: the strong rule, the weak submit. There's no empathy or morality. There's only the drive to control. Domination is a need for reaffirmation of one's own existence.
We see in Zeus a depiction of unchecked power. His abuses, as seen in the myths of Leda and Europa, and we could also cite Io, Danae, Callisto, Semele, and so many others whose stories have been distorted or silenced, rarely faced real consequences. But consider our own time. Legal mechanisms and social pressure can lead to accountability. Absolute impunity has been challenged, and the imposed silence has begun to be broken. Crucially, today, victims at least have the chance to have a voice, a chance those silenced mythological figures never had. This possibility of speaking out, of exposing the truth, is perhaps the greatest difference between myth and our era. However, it would be naive to believe the problem has disappeared. The shadow of Zeus's mentality still looms, fueled by the fear of retaliation or discredit. For this reason, the battle against the culture of silence and coercion is far from over. As I mentioned in Civilization and its discontents, a lack of control over one's own body leads to depersonalization. The victim ceases to see themselves as a subject, becoming instead an object of desire, a reflection of the abuser's desire. This generates profound psychic conflict, wherein the ego struggles to reconstitute itself. Zeus, the king of the gods, is often portrayed as a figure of absolute power and divine wisdom. But behind this celestial facade lies a dark history of abuse and domination, a history that, over the centuries, has been romanticized and transformed into glorified myths. It's a reminder of how power can be distorted and glorified, even when it leaves deep scars. Behind many legends lies the truth of how power can be distorted and manipulated. That's why the saga of Zeus and his victims isn't just the stuff of myth, but a warning. Facing this reality is the first step toward changing the future. If you want to keep exploring the stories and reflections that shape our understanding of the world, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss upcoming videos. See you on the next journey. Bye.